One of the questions you're often asked as a conservationist is how do you actually save a species? The answer is complicated and depends on the species, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, and how rare it is. Today we're looking after a plant called Starved Wood-sedge. It's probably one of the rarest plants in the UK, and it now only grows in 2 sites, one of which is in Somerset and one of which is here in Surrey. One of the great paradoxes about species conservation is the rarer something gets, almost the easier it becomes to conserve it. What we can do here, because we know where each individual plant is we can actually look after them on an individual basis. This site has a very interesting history. The plant was actually declared extinct here for several decades, and then came the Great Storm of 1987, when a tree that was shading out this area came down. It created the right level of light and it also disturbed the soil, and Starved Wood-sedge appeared for the first time in almost a century. Unfortunately, since then, as with most woodland in the UK, it's become very overgrown, it's not really used for anything anymore, and it's become deeply shaded, and the plants are now in danger of being lost again. So what we're doing today is trying to open up that shade, particularly concentrating on where the sun comes in, removing the hedge line, taking out all the bramble and the things which would compete with the plants, and creating perfect open conditions. At this point, hopefully the species will start looking after itself and we don't need to actually intervene with the plants themselves. Now we're in midwinter at the moment, so it's not at its absolute best, but actually it's still a rather fantastic thing. It's a real tussock former, which quite a few of the sedges do, but nothing quite to this degree. It's been compared to a green looking Dougal in the past. It really stands out here because it's so much larger than anything else we've got at this site. The real interest in this species, apart from its rarity, is to do with the size of its seed pods. Now, the technical word for these is utricles, but you can easily call them seeds, and they're the largest seeds to be found on any of our native sedges. Again, they're not at their best at this time of year, but you can see how swollen they are. Now, interestingly, the reason it's called Starved Wood-sedge is because there's not many of these seeds. As you can see, there's typically 4 or 5 on each bundle, and that's where the name comes from.
Another important part of this work is monitoring the plants, which I've been doing for the last 4 years. And I normally come along in September, October time when the plants are flowering, because it's much easier to identify then. And also we do make a note of which ones have flowered in which year, and so we monitor it each year. So I do a sketch map of the plants, which can be quite tricky because they grow quite closely together. So you have to try and identify individual clumps. And what I often do as well is take a photograph, and then that shows a bit more easily which plant is which, where they're located, and I mark on there whether it's flowered or whether it hasn't.